All things in major conflicts in the world. This madness that is prevalent in the society is gnawing at the root of our civilization. So, in today's verse in Bhagavad Gita, let us explore to see, is there a cure for this madness? Is there any way to treat this madness, or will it continue unchecked? Is there any solution for this? We'll see that in today's class. But first we start with prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, Sankhya Yoga, text 35. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Asamshayam Mahabaho Manaha Durnigraham Chalam Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Durnigraham Cha Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam Abhyasena Tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Cha Grihyate. And purport A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by constant practice and by detachment. Translation with repetition. The blessed Lord said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by constant practice and by detachment. Purport. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind, as expressed by Arjuna, is accepted by the personality of Godhead. But at the same time, he suggests that by practice and detachment, it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe strict rules and regulations, such as placing himself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the supersoul, restraining the senses and the mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and the foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the spirit, supreme spirit. This attachment is called Pareshanubhuti, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of the transcendental activities of the Lord Krishna, hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind. And eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. This treatment is a process of Krishna consciousness. Thus ends a wonderful transcendental Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So this verse 6.35, Krishna is speaking, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. And prior to this, Arjuna has asked a very pertinent question in the 6th chapter titled Sankhya Yoga. Krishna has described from the very beginning of the 6th chapter the complete process of, you can say, Ashtanga Yoga, the eightfold process of mysticism, starting from going to a secluded place, observing vows of celibacy, sitting erect in a place that is not too low, not too high. Several restrictions have been given. A detailed process has been described in the 6th chapter. And after hearing of all of that, Arjuna asks one question. He says, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna tramathi balavat dridam tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva sudushkaram. So we saw this last Sunday evening, the detailed explanation of this verse. where Arjuna is accepting that, yes, you have described to me a very nice process of yoga, but it does not seem very practical to me, because this mind, it is very difficult to control. And then he gives 4 adjectives to the mind. He says, Chanchalam, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna, Chanchalam. And that is flickering. And in the translation, Prabhupada says restless, flickering or restless, Chanchalam, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna. Pramathi, that is another adjective he uses. That is Pramathi, is agitating. The mind is always agitating. Smallest thing, immediately it gets agitated. Balavat, very strong. Not easy to control the mind. It's very, very strong. Dridam, obstinate. So the mind is Chanchalam, restless. Pramathi, that is agitating. And then Balavat, strong. Dridam, very obstinate. Once it digs in, once it decides that this is what I want to do, very difficult to change the mind. And he says that Tasyaham, therefore, Nigraham, I consider, Manye, Nigraham means subduing. Tasyaham Manye, therefore, I consider, Nigraham, that is to subdue the mind, is more difficult. Vayo riva sudushkaram, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So we know how in the upper layers of the atmosphere, even here, the lower layers, sometimes when there is a hurricane, even ordinary wind, nobody can stop it. It is not that you can just put some hand or some anything. Even the tall buildings that you might construct, they cannot block the wind. Of course, by nature's arrangement, it can be blocked. We have seen how in the Indian subcontinent, by the presence of Himalayas, a lot of the Arctic blast from the North Pole, it is blocked. But ordinarily, we cannot block it. By our effort, it is not possible. Here, there is no such mountain ranges. So even though you have got very big white mountains, right? But they don't stop the Arctic blast. So that's why we keep having all this Arctic cool air coming in Boston area, and even south up to Virginia. All the Arctic blast comes. Why? Because we are not man-made structures. All the tall skyscrapers, they cannot block the wind. They only make it faster. If you go to the streets of New York, you'll feel the wind is blowing fast because of the wind tunnel effect. But it's not possible to stop. So we saw in detail the complexities of the mind, how the mind is like a independent mad elephant, very difficult to control. So interestingly, before that verse 6.34, when was the previous question asked by Arjuna? What was the previous question? Does anybody remember? Because entire 6th chapter, Arjuna has not asked any question until last week's verse 34. So prior to that, what was the previous question that was asked by Arjuna? When did it happen? Does anybody remember? Online? Here? 5th chapter? Arjuna asks. Beginning of 5th chapter. So first verse of the 5th chapter is beginning with Arjuna's question. He says, Arjuna uvacha sanyasam karmanam Krishna punaryogam cha samshasi yachreya etayorekam tanme bruhi sunishchitam. So he's asking Krishna to describe something. So he's first of all, Krishna, you are telling that sannyasam, renunciation, is very important. You must renounce. But then you're also talking about punaryogam cha samsashi. You're also talking about devotional service, action in devotional service. So first of all, you're asking me to be renounced. And then you're also saying you must act in devotional service. So Arjuna is a little bit confused. Which is more important? Should I just renounce everything and sit quietly? But then you're saying fight the war also. And that is devotional service. Krishna is saying that fighting the battle is actually devotional service. So he's confused. And he is asking Krishna to describe. And the answer to that is entire 5th chapter and entire 6th chapter up to this point of the previous verse that Krishna is describing. How by mere renunciation of works, one cannot achieve perfection. And in that same process, in the same answer to that question, he describes the entire Sankhya Ashtanga Yoga process. And after hearing that, initially in the 5th chapter, Arjuna does not interrupt. He does not ask any question. Because Krishna is saying that no, you can stay in the world, you can be part of this world, and still you can act in Krishna consciousness by simply being detached from the fruits of the result, but you can act for the satisfaction of Krishna, and you can continue to do your work. So how you can be renounced while being in the world? He describes that, and Arjuna says, okay, I think I understand this part. He's not asking any question in that. He's understanding Karma Yoga, action in Krishna consciousness. He's able to understand. But when he is describing this 6th chapter, and he's talking about Chau Deshe, and he's talking about going to the secluded place, Arjuna is saying, it doesn't seem real. How is it possible for me to do? I'm a householder, I've got responsibilities. It's not possible for me to do this. Seems very difficult. And you're telling me to control my mind, because in 6th chapter, verse after verse, there is description of controlling the mind. And so that is, he's finding that very difficult. So some of these verses, see how he says, Shuchau Deshe Pratisthapya Sthiramasanam Atmanaha. To practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and soft cloth. The seat should neither be too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and then should practice yoga by controlling the mind and senses, purifying the heart and fixing the mind on one point. So like this, there are other considerations also, and Arjuna is not finding that very palatable. And he's asking this question to Krishna, and Krishna is answering. So let us see what he's saying in his answer today. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamshayam Mahabaho Manodurnigraham Chalam Abhyasena tu Kaunteya Vairagyena Chagrahyate. So Asamshayam, doubtless, first of all, Krishna is agreeing with Arjuna. Doubtless, yes, you're right. Asamshayam Mahabaho. Mahabaho is mighty armed Arjuna. Because he has said, I cannot even, I can control the wind maybe, but I cannot control this mind. So Arjuna is encouraging, see, you're a mighty armed person. But yes, you're right. You're right. It is very, very difficult to control the mind. Mano durnigraham chalam. Previously, Arjuna is saying, nigraham, tasyaham nigraham manye. Controlling, nigraham means controlling. Tasyaham nigraham manye. And Krishna is reinforcing that. He's saying, durnigraham, very difficult to curb. Very, very difficult. Yes, you're right. Why? Because mind is chalam. And the previous verse, Krishna, what is Arjuna saying? Chanchalam himana Krishna. Very flickering, restless. And Krishna is agreeing, yes, chalam. So 2 words he's repeating from Arjuna's statement. Sometimes we say like that, right? In our ordinary dealings also. If somebody asks a question and you want to answer, this is actually a lesson how Krishna is talking to Arjuna. Entire Bhagavad Gita, apart from the highest truth on our why we are in this material world, why we are suffering, how to get out of it, who are we, why we are here, what is our relationship with Krishna. That is the highest truth. But there are also many other lessons that can be drawn. And here Krishna is, the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna is also a lesson in how to communicate, how to hear empathetically. In listening, there are different kinds of listening. Empathetic listening means, first of all, understanding the other person's point of view. And that comes with first repeating what the person has said. Yes, you have said it is very difficult to curb. I agree, it is very difficult to curb. But then Krishna gives an answer. He gives a clue. He gives a formula. No, it is possible to control. Although it is very difficult, you're right, but it is possible to control. How does he say? How is it possible? Abhyasena tu kaunteya vairagyena cha grihyate. So he is saying 2 things. Abhyasena, that is by practice, and not just like that, not just ordinary practice. Like sometimes we, as an adult, we want to learn some maybe musical instrument. Maybe we want to learn the piano or guitar or something. And we go for some class, half an hour, and then so many other things are there. You're not able to practice afterwards, right? And then after some 1 or 2, or if you take up weight training, every day, every person after January 1st, yes, this year I want to lose weight. You'll take up a resolution. And then for maybe 1 or 2 weeks, every day you do some training, running, jogging, something. And then 2 weeks it goes away. But even during that period, it's like hardly half an hour in a day, 10 minutes, 15 minutes in a day. But that is not the solution here. Abhyasena, that is translated as constant practice. By constant practice and by vairagyena cha grihyate. That is by detachment. Grihyate means can be controlled. Grihyate means can be controlled. So it is possible to control the mind by constant practice and detachment. So let us see a little bit about what was discussed last time. There was this progression given of a very difficult to control mind: chanchalam, pramati, dridam, balavat. And these 4 words we just saw previously. Chanchalam means restless. And we saw how a restless mind leads to turbulence, leads to agitation. The smallest thing, it can lead to agitation. If a mind is restless, which means what? The mind does not have fixed, it does not have a one-pointed attention. The mind does not have one goal. If the mind is not fixed in one-pointed attention, that means the state of the mind is described as restless. There are only 2 states of mind. Either it is fixed in one thing, or it is restless. These are only 2 states. So mind is either fixed or restless. It's obvious, these are the opposites. So what does a restless mind do? Restless mind means that it's very easy to agitate. It's turbulent, very, very easy to become agitated. Smallest thing it can upset. And in the upset state of mind, when we contemplate on the root cause, why am I upset? What is the reason for this? In that turbulent state of mind, when we are contemplating, reflecting, meditating upon why we are upset, we actually don't come to the right conclusion. So before we do a root cause of our upset, first of all, we must calm down the mind. Because in the agitated state of mind, when you do a root cause analysis, we heard this in the last class, what comes out, actually root cause is criticism. It is deflection of the reason onto somebody else. My mind is agitated because somebody else did something. He did like that, he behaved towards me, she behaved towards me like this. She did not give me respect, she did this, I could have done better. But because of this disturbance caused by other people, therefore my mind is restless. This is how a restless mind arrives at a conclusion of root cause of restlessness. So sometimes we reflect, why am I upset like this? What is the reason? And the answer comes out. And this is also one of the big reasons for suicides. We just saw in the news how there is a Stanford soccer goalkeeper, 22 years old, the pride of her community, Stanford College. She's studying, and wonderful goalkeeper and a great inspiration to her team. And suddenly one day morning, just 2-3 days back, they found her that she's dead in her bed. She's not alive. I don't know if it's a bed or wherever it was. They found her not alive. And then the next day, the parents released the statement that actually she has committed suicide. Just imagine, she's a very successful person, very respected by and liked by everybody. But something must have bothered her. Something must have bothered her. And no doubt she has contemplated on that. And no doubt it has happened multiple times. Because nobody takes an extreme step with just one incident. It must have happened many times before. And in our life also, we encounter these problems. Sometimes there is we think everything is going well. We are doing our fullest extent, either it may be in work or it may be in family, in our friends, in our relationships. We are putting everything we can. And then there is some criticism, some irritation somewhere.
So,
and
can I ask a question? So when that girl experienced the problem first time, and if she can be able to improve the second time and third time, is that the girl will be enhanced with our capabilities of facing that situation, or the girl is going to be getting weakened of the continuation of the problem?
Yes, I think that answer will also come as you hear this. So the question was whether there is every time we contemplate on some incident and we think about it, do we become stronger? Because we have experienced a turbulence. Does turbulence make us strong, or does turbulence make us weak? Don't our adversities in life, in fact, make us stronger? Aren't adversities good? Certainly, when you have the right perspective to deal with adversity, the adversities makes us stronger. But when we don't have the right perspective to deal with the adversities we are unable to withhold, or we are unable to take the adversity. So just as when there is a strong wind, there is a hurricane, and the tree is bending, it doesn't break. The tree that is standing stiff breaks. If in the turbulent mind, when you reflect upon it, it always comes out that I am right, I should stand my ground, everybody else should change. It is their fault. That is a tree that does not bend. But when at the time of adversity, if we allow yourself to calm down and reflect upon it as a outside person, looking inward to yourself, as an outsider looking at ourselves, and then we see, oh, here is where I made a mistake. I should change. That's a tree that is flexing itself. A tree that is flexing itself can certainly withstand the storm, but the tree that is not flexing itself cannot. And for that state, one must have not a fixed mind at that point. So let us continue with this. So the upset mind leads to criticism, then it becomes obstinate and very, very strong mind. That leads to madness. It is said that that pramattaha, that is the result, end result of all this different state of restlessness, turbulence, strong, obstinate behavior, is that ultimately we have no idea what is good for us, what is not good for us. And in the extreme state, one may even take away one's own life, which actually is very detrimental, because one has to continue that, start once again that life, whatever life was remaining, that life, all the experiences that we were supposed to endure has not gone away. One has to simply take one more birth to again undergo all those experiences, because that quota of happiness or distress has not gone away just by us taking away our life. So let us see now further what Krishna is saying. So Krishna is giving two clues here on how we can actually control the mind. So if we follow these two clues, then every adversity will make us stronger, will make us even stronger, as opposed to if you did not have this clue. Because it is possible for somebody that even without Krishna consciousness, that they may become stronger with adversity if they have the right perspective. But it is not the correct, lasting, and complete cure. Temporary cure. It is just that there is a threshold that they have not yet met. Surely one day the threshold will come where it is a last straw that breaks the camel's back situation will happen, and the person will break. Unless they have this perspective. Because if they have this perspective, then every adversity is not even viewed as an adversity. It is viewed as a learning experience. So these two, as we have seen, they are abhyasa, practice, and detachment. So this is a process that has been described. And what is the details of the practice? What is really the abhyasa that has been talked about? Is it the abhyasa of going to a secluded place and sitting sitting erect like that, concentrating on the tip of the nose, sitting on a kusha grass, which is what has been described here, which we just read that. Suchau deshe pratishtapya, I read that. One should practice yoga by controlling the mind and senses, purifying. Is that what is being talked about in this verse by Krishna? That is not what is being talked about. So let us see what is being talked about. What kind of abhyasa is he talking about? Because he has just described the process, and Arjuna is saying, no, I cannot do this. Then Krishna is saying, let's practice it. So you might think, it's very easy to think that actually he's talking about whatever is described just now, same thing you should practice. But actually in the purport, Prabhupada is clarifying, no, that is not what he's talking about. Because that has already been explained by Arjuna as being very, very difficult. So why would Krishna again say the same thing? That no, just go back and practice it. Right? Because Arjuna is not an ordinary person. Right? 5,000 years back, such wonderful facilities were there. Very nice forests were there. And their lifestyle was a little bit more calm. Not so many disturbances as we have today. And family members more conducive. Everything is more conducive than what we have today. Not every small. Today our situation is we don't have the ability or in practice or any experience even in undertaking the kind of austerities that are required to practice this Ashtanga Yoga. So Arjuna has said it's difficult, and Krishna is saying abhyasa. But what abhyasa is that? Let us see what Prabhupada says. He says, in the present age, this is Prabhupada's purport in today's verse. In the present age, no one can observe strict rules and regulations, such as placing oneself in a sacred place. That is what we saw, Shuchau Deshe. Focusing one's mind on super soul. And that is there in the next verse after the Shuchau Deshe verse. Manaha samyama matchitto. So Krishna is advising that as part of this process, matchitto, one must concentrate on the super soul. Restraining the senses in the mind, observing celibacy, brahmacharya vrate sthitaha, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc. So all these things are very, very difficult. So what is to be done then? By practicing of Krishna consciousness, however, one engages in 9 types of devotional service. So that is what is mentioned in the purport today, that by engaging in Krishna consciousness, by practicing of Krishna consciousness, one engages in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. And we will see how that is actually helping in achieving the goal of controlling the mind. So let us look at this 9 types of devotional service. Where is this 9 type coming from? Actually, these 9 types of devotional service have been listed by Prahalad Maharaj in Srimad Bhagavatam. So when one day when Hiranyakashipu was seated on his throne, was there in his house, in his palace, the mother of Prahalad Maharaj personally bathes Prahalad Maharaj. Normally, he is a prince, Prahalada. Are you aware of Prahalad? You can see his photo here, the altar next to Narsimhadev, must be there below. You've seen. So Prahalada, he is a prince. There will be so many servants to bathe him and dress him every day. But on this particular occasion, his mother personally bathed him and nicely decorated him, very nicely dressed him, and presented him in front of his father. And as soon as he saw his father, he paid full obeisances. And Hiranyakashipu just saw, oh, this little boy, he is paying obeisances. He was very overcome with joy and affection. He picked him up and kept him on his lap. And very affectionately, he asked him, so my dear son, please describe to me, what is the highest that you have learned, highest principle that you have learned from your teachers? Because he was a small boy, he was going to school. So he asked this question. And immediately Prahalad Maharaj gives this reply. Now, by hearing this reply, of course, Hiranyakashipu was very much shocked, because he is a demoniac person, atheistic person. He does not want to hear anything that is glorifying the Supreme Lord or any power higher than himself. But let us see what Prahalad Maharaj says. Sri Prahalada Uvacha Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu Smaranam Pada Sevanam Archanam Vandanam Dasyam Sakyam Atmani Vedanam Iti Pumscharpita Vishnu Bhaktischain Navalakshana Kriyate Bhagavati Adha Tanmanye Adhitam Uttamam. So here there are 9 Navalakshana that have been described of bhakti, of devotional service. Bhakti's chain, Navalakshanam. And what are these Navalakshanam? Shravanam, that is hearing. Kirtanam, chanting. Vishnoho, chanting the glories of the Lord. Smaranam, remembering the Lord. Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord. Archanam, worshipping the Shodasha Upachara worship that we do. Vandanam, offering prayers, offering obeisances. Dasyam, serving the Lord as a servant. Sakyam, understanding the nature of the Lord as a supreme friend and the benefactor, and acting in a friendly relationship with the Lord. Atmanivedanam, complete and total full surrender. So these are the 9 varieties, 9 types of devotional service that have been described by Prahalad Maharaj. And let us see the translation. Prahalad Maharaj said, hearing and chanting about the holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord. That is on the after, so 16 type of paraphernalia, that is Archanam, offering prayers to the Lord, Vandanam, becoming his servant, that is Dasyam, considering Lord one's best friend, Sakyam, and surrendering everything unto him, Atmanivedanam. In other words, serving him with body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. One who has dedicated his life to the service of Krishna through these 9 methods should be understood to be the most learned person, for he has acquired complete knowledge. So these are the 9 processes of devotional service that have been described. And there is a wonderful purport in this verse. And let me just read a little bit of that, particularly in the one that describes the first. We'll study a little bit about the first 3. Shravanam, Kirtanam Vishnoho, Smaranam. These 3. And in today's verse, out of these, Shravanam or hearing has been mentioned as the most important one. Most important one. So let us just see a little bit about these different processes, and particularly focusing on the first 3. So Prabhupada says in the purport of this verse that one's sincere endeavor to perform these 9 processes of devotional service is technically called bhakti. So, because our hearing, it is not a perfect hearing. It's not. It is not. We are not hearing with an open heart. We are not truly hearing all the time. But if you make a sincere endeavor to hear with an open heart, if you make a sincere endeavor to chant the glories of the Lord, to describe the glories of the Lord, to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. There are several offenses that one can do while chanting. That is called the offensive stage of chanting. So we are actually, even when we chant like this, we are not chanting with a purified mind, with a purified heart. We are chanting with various offenses. But still, if we make a sincere effort to chant offenselessly, to hear Bhagavatam, or to remember Krishna, even though it's not perfect. But if you make a sincere effort, that is called, that's what Prabhupada is saying in the purport. It's a very interesting, very hope-giving sentence, because normally we can consider that bhakti is not easy to achieve. Bhakti can be only obtained with great difficulty, lot of endeavor. But this sentence gives us a lot of hope, because this is not about perfectly executing these 9 different processes, but rather about sincerely executing them. So sincere endeavor to perform these 9 processes of devotional service is technically called bhakti. So before I go to that, there is a very insightful, very wonderful description by the Guru Maharaj of Srila Prabhupada. His name is Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So his Guru Maharaj, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he has written several books as well. And in one of those books, he's describing what these nine different processes are. I'll just read this one paragraph from that book, which Prabhupada has quoted in Bhagavatam. So, quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada says, the word Shravana refers to giving oral reception to the holy name and description of the Lord's form, qualities, entourage, and pastimes as explained in Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and similar authorized scriptures. After orally receiving such messages, one should memorize these vibrations and repeat them. That is Kirtanam. When we hear them, we should memorize and repeat. That is Kirtanam. Smaranam means trying to understand more and more about the Supreme Lord. And Pada Sevanam means engaging oneself in serving the lotus feet of the Lord according to time, place, and circumstances. Archanam means worshipping Lord Vishnu as one does in the temple, and Vandanam means offering respectful obeisances. And it has also been described by Prabhupada elsewhere that it's also offering prayers. So Vandanam can mean offering respectful obeisances. It can also mean offering prayers, both. Vandanam means namaskuru, offering obeisances or offering prayers. Thinking oneself to be Nitya Krishna Das, everlastingly a servant of Krishna, is called Dasyam. And Sakyam means being a well-wisher of Krishna. Krishna wants everyone to surrender unto him because everyone is constitutionally his servant. Therefore, as a sincere friend of Krishna, one should preach this philosophy, requesting everyone to surrender to Krishna. Atma Nivedanam means offering Krishna everything, including one's body, mind, and intelligence, and whatever one may possess. So, this is a description given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And Prabhupada places emphasis in this verse where 9 types of devotional service are described. There is one important word here, and that is Adha. Kriyate Bhagavati Adha. So what does this word Adha mean? Because this word Adha is a very important qualifier of everything else that has been stated above. So there are 9 types of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnoho. So does it mean, for example, if somebody is hearing the glories of the Lord, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, and then he's chanting those glories, he's repeating them, memorizing them and repeating them, and then constantly remembering Krishna, Pada Sevanam, serving the lotus feet of the Lord for some time, and then for some other time, maybe he glorifies the President of India or Prime Minister of India. For some other time, he glorifies some cricketer. For some other time, he's glorifying some movie star. Is that considered bhakti? this word adha gives a qualification. That is not bhakti. The adha means doing that exclusively, in exclusion of other such processes, um, directly. So it means direct offering and without expectation of a result. Without expectation of result. So, for example, if somebody may, while offering some archana, sometimes we come to the temple and perform some archana, and then we expect that there will be some benefit coming out of it. And according to Vedas, there is a section called Karma Kanda, where one can do such a ritual. One can perform various yagnas. And then when at the end of the yagna, when there's a karma phala, phalastuti that is being read, then after you get that phala, then a portion of that is given back to Krishna or to the Lord. So here, it directly one should be given means, in the beginning position itself, one must be in a surrendered state. In the beginning itself, one must state that this activity I am doing for your pleasure, and then begin the activity. Not that we perform the activity and then from the result, we expect a result, keep some for ourselves, and then we give something else. That is indirect. That is an indirect way of giving our result to Krishna. So direct devotional service means in the beginning itself, that activity must be designated as an activity that is designed to please the Lord. So that is called Adha. And so now let us look at Shravanam, the first point that we talked about. So in Shravanam, we have, of course, the wonderful prayers left behind by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, starting with Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It's called Shishtastakam prayers. And the first one says, Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhava Mahadavagi Nirvapanam. So, Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidhyavadu Jivanam, Anandam Buddhivardhanam, Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadhanam, Sarvatma Snapanam Param Vijayate, Sri Krishna Sankirtanam. So, in this, the Cheto Darpana Marjanam, or the cleansing of the heart that happens by the chanting of the holy name, which is happening due to the dirty modes of associating with the dirty modes of material nature. So what happens is that unless we do hearing first, we won't come to this point of chanting. Because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given the process of cleansing one's heart by chanting of the holy name, by chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. But to get to this point of chanting, hearing is very important. That is why the 9 types of devotional services, starting with Shravanam. So in the devotional service, one first associates with sadhus, Adav, Shraddha, starting with some faith, Tataha Sadhu Sangha, Tataha Bhajana Kriya. So this Bhajana Kriya, what happens is first is you hear from the sadhu. You hear about Bhagavatam. And then the faith becomes stronger and one can implement what has been heard. And what the sadhu will say, chant the glories of the Lord, chant Hare Krishna. So this chanting is preceded by hearing. So that's why there's a very special place for hearing. And when you hear as we hear, what happens is that there is the firm faith or firm understanding of the form of the Lord becomes established as you go through the process of hearing and chanting. So first you hear and then you chant. As you keep chanting, the heart is cleansed of all the misgivings, of all the doubts that maybe I'm a product of matter, maybe life has come from matter, maybe by combination of chemicals I'm here. Therefore, my life is meant for enjoyment, eat, drink, make merry. That is what my life is meant for. So all these misgivings go away. When the heart is cleansed, what happens is that one gets firm faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His form also. So we come to understand, you can sit on the chair. You can sit on the chair. Please take a chair. You can take a chair. It's uncomfortable like that. Please, you can take a chair. It's okay. So as we realize the form of the Lord, then we can understand the transcendental qualities. And when we understand the transcendental qualities, we understand the association, the devotees who are associated with the Lord. As we understand the devotees who are associated with the Lord, and we understand the transcendental qualities and pastime, naturally there is a friendship that is awakened, and naturally there is a desire to broadcast these glories to everybody else. So this is how the progression of Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, all this chronologically progresses. There is this wonderful verse which is there in Srimad Bhagavatam that talks about the revolutionary effect that hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam particularly has on the general population. So in the Bhagavatam it is said, Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadhavatyapi namani anantasya yasho ankitani yat shrinmanti gayanti ghananti sadavaha. So Tadvag visargo, that kind of literature, on the other hand, that kind of literature, what kind of literature is talking about? That kind of literature in which yasmin pratishlokam, in every verse after verse, stanza after stanza after stanza, what is the topic of that literature? Namani anantasya yasho ankitaniyat, where the name, form, glories, and pastimes of the Lord, they are of the unlimited Supreme Lord, Anantasya, they are glorified. They are all described. If stanza after stanza that is described, that particular literature, even if it is irregularly composed, abhaddhavati api, even if it's irregularly composed. Why it is talking about irregularly composed? Because in Srimad Bhagavatam, unlike say in other literatures, they've got fixed kind of the stanzas. Every stanza will be very uniform. Whereas in Bhagavatam, there is a different style adopted. In that style, there is irregularity in the form of the stanzas. Some verses have got a certain meter. Some other verses got a different kind of meter. Of course, this is the humility of the speaker. Bhagavatam is the highest in perfect literature, and yet he's saying that even if you consider that the Srimad Bhagavatam is irregularly composed and it is imperfect, but because it has got the glories of the Lord which have been described stanza after stanza after stanza, therefore, when the sadhus, when the purified devotees, when they hear, they take transcendental pleasure in hearing and chanting, and they accept it. And that brings about a revolution in the lives of the ordinary people. Let us see the translation. On the other hand, that literature, which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a different creation. Full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So this world's misdirected civilization that we started with the video today, bombing that is going on, and the protest and the counter-protest, just by a small, what is after all that country doing? Ukraine wanted to join some NATO. I don't know the full political details. But at any smallest provocation, a country is willing to invade another country and bomb the people and cause so much damage. So this misdirected civilization, what is the correct solution for that? That is given here. That how do you bring about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization? Let us look at the purport here. It's a little wordy, but it is very, very deep and very pertinent to what is happening today. This is Prabhupada says in the explanation of this verse. So he's saying, but a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord, because by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And the result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. There is so much insanity in the world. There is so much madness in the world, that how do you bring about the change? It is actually by propagating the transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the only way. While preparing this commentation, and this commentation was written when? In 1961, 1962, in that time. That is when Srila Prabhupada wrote this commentary of this first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So while writing this commentary, this is 1961-62, Prabhupada is writing this. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have practically no business in the political field. Yet, we see that previously there were both China and India, and they both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. The reason is that they lived in those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness. And every country over the surface of the world was God-fearing, pure-hearted, and simple. And there was no question of political diplomacy. There is no cause of quarrel between two countries, China and India, over land, which is not very suitable for habitation. Right? The fight was about some tract of land in Himalayan countries, nobody can live there. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. But due to the age of quarrel, Kali, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is due not to the issue in question, but due to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, so this is in the name of secularism. All this discussion, the culture, the Vedic culture which was present is being stopped in the name of secularism. That's what Prabhupada is saying. This is not now. This is in the 60s also. Same. This is what Prabhupada is saying. Therefore, there is a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is a duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart. And naturally, the people in general will follow them. The mass of the people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change of heart of leaders only, certainly there will be radical change in the atmosphere of the world. So what is needed? Not that every single person, yet just the leaders, because common people follow the leaders. Just the leaders were to change, there will be such a big revolution. Yep. Janataga Viplava. Yadvag Visargo. Janataga Viplava. Revolution. And there is a wonderful punchline by Prabhupada. When there are too many materialistic activities by people in general, all over the world, there is no wonder that a person or a nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. See how much relevant this is today as it was 50 years, 60 years back. Then Kirtanam. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has left behind 8 verses called Shishtastakam. And this is one of those verses. Trinadapi sunichena tarorapi sahishtuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadaharihi. So Kirtaniya, or chanting of the holy names, is actually done by in the consciousness that one should think oneself lower than grass. And one should be more tolerant than a tree. And who does not expect personal honor and yet is always prepared to give all respect to others can very easily chant the holy name of the Lord. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave great emphasis on this and on this verse, on this principle, that chanting of the holy name must be done in this humble state of mind, that one must be consider himself lower than the grass. When somebody tramples on the grass does not protest. And more tolerant than a tree. Sometimes people come and take rest under the tree. They enjoy the shade of the tree. They pluck the fruit and eat the fruit. It does not protest. It doesn't say, my fruit, why are you taking? Hey, where is my money? Give me change. It doesn't say any of that. Nor does it prevent somebody from taking the shade. And afterwards, when people cut down the tree, use the wood for something else, it does not protest in any way. So this is the tolerance of the tree. If a person has got the humility of the grass and tolerance of a tree and does not expect any honor, but is willing to give all the honor to anybody, complete all the honor to others, in such a person, in that state of mind, can best start, very easily, such a person can chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So there is another very nice verse in Bhagavatam. Let us see this verse, and then we will see a very special insight which is around this verse that leads us to Smaranam, or remembering the Lord. So this verse says, Etan nirvidhyamananam ichchatam akuto bhayam yoginam nripaninitam harer namanu kirthanam. So when Sukadeva Goswami starts speaking Srimad Bhagavatam in the 2nd canto, he starts off with this verse where he says, O King, for the great yogis who have completely renounced all material connections, for those who desire all material enjoyments, And for those who are self-satisfied by the dint of transcendental knowledge, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord is recommended. So the constant chanting of the holy names is recommended for three types of people. Who are these three types of people? First is those who have completely renounced all material connections. Nirvidyamananam, yoginam, those who are, and then second variety is those who desire all material enjoyment, ichchatam, those who are enjoying, who are desiring material enjoyment. So they are for them also. And the third variety, those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge, yoginam. For all these different kinds of people, what is recommended? Constant chanting of holy name of the Lord is recommended. Harer Nama Anukirtanam. Anukirtanam is constant chanting, not just chanting a little bit here and there. Constant chanting of holy name is recommended. So what is this verse we have seen before also, and is the great verse in Bhagavatam that talks about the importance of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Now, in the purport of this verse, Prabhupada is giving a connection between the chanting and remembering. Let us see what the connection is. Prabhupada says that the chanting of the holy names can be done in people with different relationship with the Lord. Depends upon the consciousness of the person. He can have different relationship with the Lord. And based upon the type of relationship, there is a difference in the quality of remembrance. The remembrance also has a different relationship or a different kind of remembrance. So there are 5 kinds of remembrance that's been talked about. Let's look at that. According to the different relationships with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there are varieties of Nama Anukirtanam, chanting of the holy name. And thus, according to different relationships and mellows, there are 5 kinds of rememberings. These are as follows. A, conducting research into the worship of a particular form of the Lord. B, concentrating the mind on one subject and withdrawing the mind's activities of thinking, willing, and feeling from all other subjects. Concentrating upon a particular form of the Lord, receive. This is called meditation. And D, concentrating one's mind continuously on the form of the Lord. This is called dhruvanusmriti or perfect meditation. And E, awakening a likening for concentration upon a particular form. This is called samadhi or trance. So there are 5 types of smaranam that has been described here. Conducting research into the worship of a particular form, how to worship, in what way should I worship, and how that form is, that particular form, and then concentrating the mind on one subject and withdrawing the mind's activities of thinking, feeling, willing from all other subjects. Concentrating upon a particular form of the Lord. See, there are mild, small variations in these. Concentrating on one's mind continuously. So the third and fourth difference is one is continuous, other is it's not fully continuous. And then the last one is samadhi, awakening a likening for the concentration upon a particular form. So one may meditate upon a form even constantly, but may not have positive feeling towards it. So when you meditate upon a form with love, that is samadhi, continuously. And Prabhupada says mental concentration upon particular pastimes of the Lord in particular circumstances is also called remembrance. Therefore, samadhi trance can be possible in 5 different ways in terms of one's relationship. Specifically, the trance of devotees on the stage of neutrality is called mental concentration. So it's very interesting nuances of smaranam that have been described in the purport of the Prahalad Maharaj verse that we saw before. It is actually not in the description of this verse that I just read, but that verse is quoted, and in the Prahalad Maharaj verse that we saw, now 9 Navalakshanam, Bhakti Chena Navalakshanam. In that verse, there's a very detailed purport, and in that Prabhupada has quoted this. So let us come back to our, we saw that there are 9 types of devotional service, and how we saw what is the special significance of hearing. We saw in what state one should chant the holy name. And then we saw what are the 5 different types of remembrance. Now let's get back to the purport and what Prabhupada says about this hearing. So Prabhupada says, the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing about Krishna. That's the first and foremost. And further, what Prabhupada says in the purport, this is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. So currently, what is our state? There are so many things, objects of our interest. Our interest is there in several fields. And all those fields, they're actually taking away the interest from Krishna. But we are unable to draw them away. We are unable to be detached from those areas of interest. But what does hearing do? Hearing takes away our attention. It gives us detachment from all those other subjects which have nothing to do with Krishna, which are distracting us from Krishna, and focuses our mind on Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can very easily learn Vairagya. So in today's verse, there are two things that Krishna has said, right? One is Abhyasena tu kaunteya, Vairagyena cha grahyate. So we have talked about Abhyasa as to how we should do Abhyasa. Abhyasa means 9 types of devotional service, starting with hearing. Hearing is the most important. Now you'll see about Vairagya. So Vairagya, how we can easily learn Vairagya? By detaching the mind from activities that are not devoted to the Lord. So this is a very, very, very insightful and very new type of definition of Vairagya, which you have not heard before. Prabhupada defines Vairagya as, Vairagya means 2 things. Vairagya means 2 things. What are the 2 things? Detachment from matter. This you might have heard. Vairagya, detachment from matter. But there is a second thing, is equally important. Engagement of the mind in spirit. This is not common understanding of the word. Normally, if somebody says Vairagya, it just means detachment from material things. That's what people common understanding is. But actually, that is not Vairagya. So Vairagya actually means 2 things happening simultaneously. One is detachment from matter, and the other is engagement of the mind in spirit. Both these should happen simultaneously. And further, Prabhupada says how Vairagya is a direct result, or it accompanies devotional service. So Vairagya is a natural byproduct of devotional service. Prabhupada is saying that impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to activities of Krishna. Impersonal spiritual detachment means not recognizing, not accepting that Krishna is a person, not recognizing that. Because there is a field like that. There is a group of transcendentalists who do not accept that Krishna is a supreme Lord, has a transcendental form. They would not accept that. They would consider that the supreme Lord is formless. Nirguna Brahman, they call it. But actually in Vaishnava literature, Nirguna means not having material qualities. Not having material qualities. But Krishna has a transcendental form. He has a transcendental, beautiful Shyamasundara form, a 2-handed form playing the flute, Tribhanga form, very beautiful form. Completely transcendental, completely spiritual. But if a person doesn't accept that and is simply meditating upon the void, not meditating upon Krishna, but meditating upon void, then such a person also has to have detachment from matter. But such a person who is only meditating on the void, what he has to do? He has to detach from matter. But the mind has nothing else to be attached to. The mind is empty. But we have seen that actually it's very difficult to control the mind. Durnigraham, Krishna is saying. Arjuna has said 4 adjectives of mind he has said, right? Chanchalam himana Krishna, pramati balavat dridam. And then Krishna is reinforcing that, yes, you're right. It is chalam, flickering, and durnigraham. Durnigraham, he has said, very difficult to control the mind. Now, if Krishna himself is saying that, now what is the position of somebody who's simply meditating on the void and trying to become detached from matter? It won't happen. There is always going to be a residual attachment that will remain, and at the slightest provocation, attachment becomes strong. This is why we find the great sages, even Vishwamitra Muni, Sabari Muni, all these great sages, after having meditated for so many years, on slightest provocation, they actually fell down. They became distracted. And once again, they became attached to material things. Whereas when it comes to pure devotees, that never happened. When a person is attaching his mind on the activities of the Lord, on the form of the Lord, on the pastimes of the Lord, on the associates, the paraphernalia of the Lord, then that mind will never get attached to the material things, because the mind has a positive engagement. Mind has positive engagement on spirit, because Krishna is a supreme spirit. So we have Jivatma, spirit. Krishna is a supreme spirit. So the mind is engaged on the supreme spirit. There is no opportunity for the mind to get engaged on material things. So Prabhupada is saying this is practical, because by hearing Krishna, one becomes automatically automatically attached to the supreme spirit. And this attachment is called, it has got a technical name. What is that name? Pareshanubhuti, or spiritual satisfaction. So when a person is attached to Krishna, to the activities of Krishna, actually one feels satisfaction. And that satisfaction has a name. It is called Pareshanubhuti or Pareshanubhava. It's referred to as both, with the both names. And it is a spiritual satisfaction. This is not a material satisfaction. Sometimes we go for maybe we have not visited our parents in a very long time, and we are taking a flight. We're catching the flight. Let's say you're catching a flight today evening at 10:30 p.m. You take Emirates, and then you're going to India after a long time. Then the moment you book your ticket, from that time you're thinking of your parents. You're thinking, oh, what will I do? What will I do on the first day of landing? What will I do on the second day of landing? And then when you go, you're packing your stuff, you're thinking of your parents or your family members, whoever else it may be. And then you take the flight, you land, you constantly thought. That is also giving satisfaction. You go and meet your family members. Such wonderful satisfaction. It's a happy reunion. But that satisfaction is material satisfaction. The satisfaction that is being referred here on engaging our mind on Krishna, that is called spiritual satisfaction. There is an eternal satisfaction, and that is not something that will lead to dissatisfaction. Because in the case of meeting with union family members, you go there for 1 hour, 2 hours, everybody is very happy. Third hour, fighting will begin. Why didn't you come? Why didn't you call me for so many days? What happened? You have forgotten about me. All those kinds of things will happen. Or somebody else will say, you went to that person's house for dinner, you didn't come to my house. All those things will happen, correct? So the satisfaction does not last very long. It is not a spiritual satisfaction, it's not lasting. But when you engage with Krishna, that engagement, that experience is called Pareshanubhuti and gives a spiritual satisfaction. And Prabhupada gives a wonderful analogy. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. So this analogy of a hungry person eating is actually given in Bhagavatam. Let us just read this verse, and this will be, and with this soon we will wind down. The verse in Bhagavatam, 11th canto says, Bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir anyatra chaishatrika ekakalaha prapadhyamanasya yathashnatasyus tushtis pushtikshud apayo anughasam. So bhakti pareshanubhavo viraktir. Devotional service, devotion, pareshanubhava. Pareshanubhava, we just saw that. That is directly experiencing satisfaction when you come in contact with the Supreme Lord. That is pareshanubhava. Virakti. Virakti is detachment or vairagya. So these three things, bhakti, pareshanubhava, virakti, all these things, what happens? They occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way as that pleasure, tushti, pushti means nourishment of the body, and shud apayo means relief from hunger. So nourishment, pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger, they all happen with every bite of food that you take. Let's say you're extremely hungry and you become very weak because of that, and somebody gives you a plate of nice Krishna Prasadam, and you take the first bite. What happens? Are you fully satisfied? No, little bit, right? Little bit hunger is gone, and little bit strength comes. You take the second bite. Now what happens? Little bit more strength comes. Little bit more satisfaction is there. Little bit of hunger is gone now. So like that, with every morsel of food that you take, little bit of your hunger is going away. You'll become a little bit more stronger. It is not bullion. It is not that only after I finish my entire meal, then only I'll feel strong. Not like that. With every morsel of food, you can experience it. Exactly the same way, Krishna consciousness, when it is practiced, at every step of the way, you feel these things. Tushti, pushti, and sudapaya. That is, you will feel the pleasure of, and that is bhakti pareshanubhava. Bhakti, that is devotion, that is compared to pleasure. Direct experience of the Supreme Lord, pareshanubhava, that is compared to nourishment. And virakti, that is compared to relief from hunger. So all these three things, that is detachment from other things, they are all happening simultaneously for a person who's taken to Krishna consciousness, starting with hearing. So if you see in conclusion, Prabhupada is saying that there is a mention of the mad mind and there's a mention of suffering patient. So if you see this Krishna consciousness process, it can treat the mad mind and it can also give relief to the suffering patient. How does it do? Prabhupada says, it is something like curing a disease by an expert treatment and appropriate diet. Let us say somebody is sick, you go to a doctor. So, of course, in US, nobody gives diet. I've seen this. I've gone to many doctors here. And then, because we are Indians, right? After they give some medicine or they give some treatment, you'll ask, are there any dietary restrictions? And no doctor will ever say there's any dietary restrictions here in the US. Very different kind of a treatment. But in India, generally, when you go to a doctor, they will give you two things. One is they'll give you medicines and they will say, take this after food or before food. And if you ask them, okay, what kind of food? They will say, okay, don't eat too much of dahi or curds. Take a little bit of plain food, take just some bread, like that. They will say something. They'll say some advice they'll give you on how to control the diet, and that will help you with the treatment process. So to cure a disease by an expert physician requires medicine and it requires diet. So Prabhupada is giving an analogy that just as a treatment of a disease requires both a medicine as well as diet, similarly, let us see how the analogy translates. Prabhupada says the hearing of transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore the expert treatment for the mad mind. The madness that is there in the world today, that can be treated how? By hearing of the transcendental activities of Lord Krishna. And we saw earlier how the failure of the Indian, especially people of Indian origin, in propagating the Srimad Bhagavatam and propagating the knowledge contained within that is actually the root cause for conflict in the world today. And even if some leaders were to take it up, the world will get transformed. Janataga Viplo, there will be a revolution in the lives of people. And this expert treatment is for the mad mind, is by just hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord. And when you take the foodstuffs that has been offered to Krishna, Krishna Prasadam, when you eat Krishna Prasadam, that is the appropriate diet for the suffering patient. So the food that we eat should be first offered to Krishna, that is Krishna Prasadam, and that is like the diet that a suffering patient should have. And hearing of Srimad Bhagavatam is the treatment or cure for the madness of the mind that we have, that all of us have. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. And with this, I'll just stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Any questions online?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhu.
Only one doubt actually. You said continuously we have to hear, right? But continuously, like in today's world, I mean, it's very difficult, right? With our responsibilities in the office and all of that. So for that type, like, I mean, what do you suggest? Like what what our acharyas suggested in that aspect?
Good question. Very good question. Madhu Pandit Prabhu has actually explained this, even with respect to hearing. When we are chanting, we have to hear. Correct? When you chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So it is advised that when you are chanting, we have to hear that very sound. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Nityasyokta Sharini. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Dridhabhataha. Yatantasya Dridhabhataha. That was the next line. Nityokta Upasati. So what does it mean? Because Arjuna was also fighting, right? So while he's putting the arrow and fighting, how is he remembering constantly? How is he constantly hearing Bhagavatam at the time? How is he hearing Bhagavatam when he's fighting Krishna, when Arjuna is fighting the arrow? So very good question. So actually our hearing, there is an audible hearing of Bhagavatam, and then there is a hearing of the thoughts that are in our mind. whatever thoughts are there in the mind, that come in the mind, those thoughts are also giving us a class, different kinds of class. Enjoy it this way, enjoy this way. This is a problem for your, this is a reason for your suffering, like that. Oh, somebody has said something, that's why you're suffering. He has made an aggression on you, that's why you're suffering. Like this, there are various thoughts that are coming. Just as at any point we can hear Bhagavatam, we can also hear cricket commentary. We can hear something else, some other news we can hear. This, all the different sources of communication are bombarding at us, and we are choosing what to hear. In the gross world, that is the gross hearing. Then there is subtle hearing. All these thoughts that are coming in our mind, we can choose which thought to hear. We can choose which thought to hear. So when we are choosing to hear the thoughts in the background mind, that I am doing this activity for the pleasure of the Lord, for the pleasure of the service for my Guru, that is hearing Bhagavatam. So when you hear the Bhagavatam in the morning, the reason why the sandwich program has been created by Prabhupada, starting with Mangalarti, Guru Puja, and then Bhagavatam class in the morning, and then nighttime book reading. This is so that the life is sandwiched. And if you follow this properly, you will find very soon that actually we are able to hear Bhagavatam during the day. It is in the background mind. There is a background mind that is feeding the foreground mind. It resurrects, like you're from the disk, there is data that comes to the RAM. Like that, from the background mind, there is consciousness and a stream of thoughts. They're all coming from the background to the foreground. So if we follow the practice of sadhana bhakti, we will find increasingly with every morsel of food taken, gradually we will find increasingly that more and more part of our day, we're actually able to hear Bhagavatam. Any other questions? If not, like, any questions? On everyone who's online, can you please come on your camera and repeat after me? All of you, please raise your hands. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भगवद गीता की, जगत गुरु शिला प्रभुपाद की, जय गौर प्रेमानंद।